So Trajan's LRE has ended, and I thought I'd just do a little bit of a retrospective on the event, how I did in it, and some things I'd like to comment on about this event, its particularities, and about LREs in general. Just drawing from this, some case studies, I guess you could say, from this. So as you can see, I unlocked Trajann at 4 stars. I just made it over the line for that. I wasted 3 tokens. One of those was just me getting outclassed by Gamma Battle 14. That was a lot more difficult than I had anticipated, and my strategy I used for it the first time just didn't work. The other 2 times were right at the end of the event when I had the 4 stars in the bag, and I just tried a couple of battles that were probably way beyond my capabilities, the capabilities of my roster, just because I like to push my luck, and those weren't fruitful, so I could have got an extra 25 shards for Trajann, but at the end of the day, doesn't really matter. So yeah, that's where I ended up, and this was without paying for anything, so all free to play, no extra points from anywhere. Ended up on about 14,800 points, something like that. So first of all, I think I just have a little look at my roster. So I have my sort of LRE mainstays just built, and they really paid dividends as they always do. Now Aleph and Ravas for me are both raid characters potentially. I do use them, well, Aleph especially against Mortarion on my mechanical team. Ravas sometimes is useful against Rotbone or Hive Tyrant or something like that, but my other 2 really mainstay LRE characters that I use are Maladus and Rotbone, and those are basically the only 2 Diamond 3s that I have built solely for LREs, just because they're so worth it, and they really proved their value in this event, especially in the Gamma track, which we'll look at here. So made it all the way through Gamma, basically with Rotbone, Maladus, and then I have Mesa, I think, at Iron 1 and Ayak at Iron 1, so I was just including them. And they didn't basically didn't do anything except just die. And that combination of those 4 got me all the way to Battle 12 before I had to abandon them. And this got me onto my first thing that I wanted to talk about, and this is a thing that I've discussed in my LRE guide. I've brought up the LRE guide on this channel in passing before. It's quite a long document that I've written, basically where every single tip and trick I've ever thought of I've committed to writing in this document when it comes to LREs, and I think it's quite a good document. It's linked in the main description of my channel, but I don't know how many people have ever actually read that. I don't know how many people have found my channel via the guide or vice versa, so I don't know, maybe if people are interested in hearing a little more about that, I might have a little look at it in a separate video sometime in the future. But for now, just looking at this. So anyway, yeah, the thing I wanted to bring up was in my guide in one section, I'm talking about the value of Rotbone and Maladus, and sort of the value in investing in other characters that can be used alongside them. And I say, Rotbone and Maladus are so powerful on their own that if you need 3 characters to start a battle, like I did here, like you will in any LRE battle, and you have to include someone like Mesa, is there really any point in upgrading Mesa when you could just be upgrading Rotbone and Maladus instead? And my answer to that question I posed to myself was no. Rotbone and Maladus are so potent on their own that upgrading Mesa to go alongside them isn't really going to make any amount of difference in the grand scheme of things. And I do actually now have a practical example of this, because I was talking to people on the Tacticus Discord about this event, and one other person who has also a Diamond 3 Maladus and a Diamond 3 Rotbone, but they also had a Diamond 3 Mesa. So that was a very interesting thing for me to look at. So I saw that they cleared Gamma 13 with that team. I don't know if they cleared Gamma 14. My intuition says no, probably not. So it just goes to show that you could go to all of that effort. I'm not trying to, be rude about this person. I'm not saying it's stupid for them to have built Mesa to D3 for this event, because they didn't. They just had him on hand already at D3, so it's like whatever. But if you had Maladus and Rotbone at D3 like I do, and then you had Mesa sitting at Iron 1 like I did. Bringing Mesa to Diamond 3 for the sake of this event would have got me a grand total of 90 extra points by completing the Resilient requirement alongside these two requirements in Battle 13, which I didn't quite manage to do with Rockbone and Maladus. I stalled out at Battle 12. I knew they wouldn't be able to get any further by themselves. So you really do need to ask yourself a lot of times in LREs, is it really worth it for me to care about this character? Especially a character that admits, let's be honest, Mesa is pretty shit. I'm not going to go into a rant about how bad characters are, because I can do that enough other times, but do you really want to get him to D3 just for the sake of getting 90 extra points? No, I think it's really not worth it. You also have to consider that efficiency in terms, points efficiency is important in LREs, I won't deny it, but it's only super important in the first round of the event if you're gunning to get the unlock in the first round. After the first event, once you've cleared it, once the second event comes around, if your roster's sort of on the verge of being able to clear an LRE in the first run, well, there are two options. So if your roster is on the verge of, or can clear the event, can get the unlock in the first run of the event, then in the second run you'll have a whole bunch of tokens, and you'll already have completed a lot of requirements for the LRE. So you won't need to worry so much about combining a bunch of tracks efficiently in the second run of the event. You can afford to just take things one at a time. So, should I have bothered to get Mace up to D3 just so I could get 90 points further in the first run of the event? Well, that wouldn't have got me any more stars on Trajann. And now in the second run of the event, I can just tackle Resilient as a requirement on its own, and I can bring in, I don't know, say Lucian or some other Resilient high-level characters. Trajann, once he comes out, I guess would be a good one. Characters that I'd actually be willing to upgrade to high enough a level where they would make a difference in Battle 13 or 14. But yeah, bringing up Mesa just for the sake of that, or any other crappy Resilient character, Aryak as well, being an obvious one that I just left at Iron 1. Why the hell would you want to do that? I mean, if you have them lying around, use them, sure, but just it would be very, very silly to build them for the sake of that. And another thing I just like to talk about, so in my LRE guide, I have a rundown of each enemy faction that you can face and sort of give my thoughts on them and how you can tackle them. And I preemptively did a rundown on Gene Stealer cults as an enemy in my guide before the event started, and my thoughts were that basically it was going to be a case of there's going to be the aberrant hypermorphs and the pure strain Gene Stealers getting into melee with you, kind of trying to block your path. And the ultimate design of the event would be to have the Barb Gaunts as the main threat to your characters, and that everything else would just sort of act as a wall between you and them. And also in the case of the Hormagaunts and the Tyrannid Warriors, ways to trigger the Barb Gaunts passives for them to score extra hits against you to make them all the more deadly. Essentially, the main threat of the track was going to be the Barb Gaunts and to a lesser extent the pure strain Gene Stealers, and I think I was bang on the money with that prediction. So I think I'm fairly well versed in how to tackle the different enemy factions, and I have a rundown for all of them. I have rundowns for all of them, looking at each individual unit type, so if you think that might be helpful, that is something that you can look at in my guide as well. So just a little something to bring up. Barb Gaunts, I think there were a couple of things I missed out on, specifically how to deal with Tyrannid Warriors and Barb Gaunts effectively. So I'll be adding that into the guide at a later point. But yeah, for the most part, it's quite complete. Just, I need a little time before I get around to writing that, just due to personal issues, but I won't get into that. Now, I think this was, especially Gamma 14, was also a good Gamma Battle 14. In that battle, I cleared it, but I didn't get a recording of it because I forgot to activate my screen recorder, which is really annoying because actually I got to demonstrate a really useful principle and a tactic that I use a lot in my battles, which is clogging up the enemy spawns. And this is particularly useful in this track against the barb gaunts if you can pull it off, because if you can clog the spawns to the point where every barb gaunt that spawns in is forced into melee with your characters, you're essentially completely neutering them because they basically just do no damage in melee at all. And of course, them being the main source of damage for this enemy faction outside of the pure strain gene stealers, that makes your life really easy. In terms of blocking spawn points, that's actually not really feasible if you're trying to do the Maladus and Rotbone combo, just because of how slow they are. But once I gave up on Maladus and Rotbone, and I was tackling Battle 13 and 14, I just found this was a really good, useful, and effective strategy. And I'm sure if you had like a weaker Rotbone and Maladus and you stalled out a bit earlier in this track, then this could be something that you should consider doing. Yeah, very great strategy. And if you want to see videos of that, me doing that, you can look on my channel at my recordings of a beta track, which was beta battle 14, 13, and 12, where obviously I'm not using Maladus and Rotbone there. I was using Aleph, Null, and Ravas, but it was the same principle. I was rushing the spawn points and then allowing the map to fill up with enemies, just so that anything new that spawned in I could kill in melee. And that's especially useful when you're fighting the Ultramarines, because if you can force heavy intercessors and eliminators into melee, that really neuters the amount of damage that they're able to do. And it also highlighted another thing that I have brought up in my guide before as well, which is that Voxcasters are actually your friend, because they can fill up the map for you and make it very hard for the actually more dangerous enemies to even emerge from spawn points in the first place. So if you manage to set yourself up camping by a spawn point, the map being filled up with these really weak guardsmen is actually a great thing, because they can't really do any damage to your characters. They allow your characters to engage enemies where they're at their weakest, especially eliminators and heavy intercessors. And that is the general theme of LREs, is that the enemies with long range, free range, or even higher tend to be the most difficult ones to face, just because so many of them can hit you simultaneously due to their long range. They can often outpace the healing of a healer like Rotbone, or outright kill your characters before you can even have a chance to heal them up. So any way of forcing them out of their comfort zone and into a situation where you have the upper hand against them is really quite brilliant. And I was very happy to see Voxcasters included in this track. So once again, showing the value of Aleph, Null, and Reves, I just got through the entire track, literally, whole thing, just using them and Footmos to meet the full flying, full mechanical, and no physical damage requirements. And then again, Rotbone and Maladus also showed their value by meeting this full power damage lineup, and I beat every battle with them as well. And that gave 95 points per run, which was quite a good return on, just quite a good points value. Look at something like max 2 hits at 70 points, 45, 95 is higher than most other requirements that you'll see. So that was another really good reason to have Rotbone and Maladus built up. A good reason to have them built up in general is that, aside from them often meeting requirements, even if they don't meet a lot of requirements, they can still usually quite easily beat up to battle 13 or 14 pretty much on their own, maybe with a bit of help. And that in itself gets you a lot of points, even if you're not meeting a lot of requirements. And that gives you more leeway at the lower levels to, you don't have to push silly, weird requirements as high as you otherwise might have to if you weren't clearing these high tier battles, which will help you get first round unlocks more easily. And speaking of silly requirements, I mean, that was exemplified to the maximum by Alpha Track, which I have this section in my LRE guides, just going back to that again, called, I think it's Avoiding the Azrael Trap. And I bring up Azrael as a character who meets a lot of requirements for LREs. So he's got a one-hit ranged attack and one-hit maximum is something that often comes up and is worth a lot of points. He deals bolter damage, another requirement that often comes up. He deals power damage, another one, common requirement. And he also deals direct and plasma damage, which maybe one day might also be requirements for an LRE, although direct damage maybe not so likely, but certainly plasma has a chance of being a requirement. So you might think of all of these attributes that Azrael has, or you think, oh, he'll be good to level up because I can be sure that he'll almost certainly meet some requirements in every LRE that comes up. But the problem with Azrael is that he's just shit. He's just... Not only does he not fare well in horde modes, LREs, he doesn't heal, he doesn't tank well, he can't kill multiple characters at once except with his active ability, which is obviously very limited in scope. He doesn't have any traits that reduce incoming damage, really. He's just extremely bland, mediocre unit that can kill one enemy at a time. And generally, if a character can only kill one enemy at a time, they don't summon, then all that's going to happen is they're going to get surrounded and whittled down. And that's essentially what happened in this track to people who thought that, oh well, Chark build meets a lot of requirements, so I'm going to build him. And they found out that building Chark high is actually just a really bad idea, because he reduces incoming damage to him coming from Psychers, but in this track, Screamers were the real tough enemies, and he'd just get surrounded by Screamers and just get worn down, regardless of how high his level was. I was talking to someone who had a Gold 1 Death Leaper, a Gold 1 Patermine, and a Gold 1 Chark built for this event, and they only managed to beat Battle 4, with those three characters meeting both the Terrifying and Infiltrate requirements. Now, I also beat Battle 4, but I have a Gold 1 Death Leaper, a Silver 2 Patermine, and an Iron 2 Chark. And this is just exemplifying sort of the Rockbone Malodus thing I was talking about earlier, where you want to identify the strongest character and really just invest as much as you can in him and try and invest as little as you possibly can in any other characters that you don't, even if they fare well in this particular event, they might not be very good outside of a particular event. And Chark especially, I think, well, he's not even good in this event, but he's just a really bad character in general, and I don't think in future LREs he's going to have much of a role to play. He just happened to be match quite a few requirements in this one. But yeah, I don't think people will be putting too much faith in him doing well at this point. So yeah, I just invested in Death Leaper because I quite like the Death Leaper for a start, and it can self-heal, so that gives it some sustainment. It's got the Terrifying trait, so it takes a little less damage in melee than normal characters, and it also has the Camouflage trait, so it takes reduced hits from range. So it is fairly tanky, and it can self-heal when it's able to charge, so I knew that it would be kind of the linchpin of that little team of 3. The Patermine I got to Silver 2 because I just had a bunch of Genestealer Cults upgrades lying around, and I didn't really mind upgrading it that much. I thought if I could get a few summons out from it, that could turn the tide of a battle, and I have to say it was actually pretty good. So yeah, the Patermine was a good backup, but I knew the Death Leaper would kind of be the star of the show. And even if the Patermine... The main thing that the Patermine did was provide summons, so I didn't necessarily even need to rank it up that much as long as I had its active leveled up. So I avoided investing too much into this track for those two requirements being done together, because I just knew that the return on investment for it would be really poor. And as my anecdote about the person with the 3 gold 1s shows, that's a lot of investment spent for literally no extra return over what I got. And now they're stuck with a gold 1 Chark and a gold 1 Patermine, which just kind of shit characters. I mean, I like the Patermine, so I didn't mind upgrading it, but I'm not going to be shy about saying I don't think it's particularly good. It's just my preference. And there was someone else who I was talking to who had a Diamond 3 Patermine, Diamond 3 Death Leaper, and a Diamond 3 Chark. they cleared everything up to and including Battle 7 for Infiltrate and Terrifying, but they didn't, I believe, get any further than that, or at least that's the last I heard from them. They didn't want to tackle Battle 8 because they're saying Battle 7 already got quite hairy with those. So again, if you're thinking, oh god, I need to get as much efficiency as I can in terms of points from tokens, I need to upgrade my Pay to Mine, my Death Leaper, and my Chark, well, you could spend all of those resources getting all those guys to Diamond 3 and get a grand total of like 40 extra point. So 50 points per token for Terrifying and 85 points per token for Infiltrate, so that's 135 points from requirements per token. Or alternatively, you could just do, Piercing instead and get 95 points. So for all of that effort, you're just getting 40 extra points per token as you're going through the first time. Is that really worth it? Absolutely not. For all the upgrades that it would have taken for me to get the Pay to Mine and the Death Leaper and Chark to that level, I could have got, Maladus and Rockbone and Aleph up to that level from next to nothing, at bronze or iron or whatever, and achieved far greater of a result, both in terms of this LRE and probably future LREs, because those characters are real LRE all-stars, whereas characters like Chark, Pay to Mine, they're not going to see any kind of generalized use. You're never going to be excited to see them being a character that meets a lot of requirements in any future LREs, just because of how poorly they perform. Whereas every time I see, I can use Rockbone and Maladus in this LRE track and they fulfill 2 requirements, that I'm overjoyed about that, because I know that that's just going to be an easy track for me. And that just would not be the case with either of these other characters that I've mentioned. So yeah, I think that's just a bit of a cautionary tale against putting too much importance on characters that meet a bunch of requirements without actually being good, and also placing too much emphasis on token efficiency, because at the end of the day, even with the extra token efficiency that those combinations provided, for me, that wouldn't have actually made any difference. I still would have got Trajann at 4 stars, so what would it have even have mattered? Maybe even if putting all of that investment into those characters did get you across the line from 3 stars to 4 stars, do you really want to upgrade fucking Chark to Diamond 3 just to get Trajann at 4 stars rather than 3 stars? I'd literally rather do anything else, That little extra stat boost on Trajann that you'll get in the next run of the event anyway, because you don't have to worry so much about token efficiency. Does it really matter so much that you want to blow a bunch of resources pumping up these just crap, awful characters? It's just, it makes absolutely no sense to me. And if you're in a situation where maybe you're not going to, if you think, I might not be able to get the unlock, then you're in a situation where you still don't want to be upgrading Chark or the Pay to Mine, because you obviously don't have Maladus and Rockbone built up to a level where they can clear all the way through a track, so you'd be better off just spending your resources on them instead. Stuff like the Pay to Mine Chark nonsense is stuff for absolute mega whales. You shouldn't pay any mind to it at all. Most you should do, again, with lineups like that, is just identify which one will be the best in this event and in future events, which is the Death Leaper, and maybe invest in them if you want to. And yes, I did invest into the Death Leaper in this event because my roster is now developed enough where I can afford to do stuff like that, but I probably wouldn't recommend it too far. In fact, I might say that I was the fool here, because I have a guildmate who has, I think, the Death Leaper and Pay to Mine at bronze level, something like that, and Chark at stone 1, and he's still managed to beat the first 2 battles of this. So I barely got any extra points over him in terms of token efficiency, and he put basically no resources into any of those characters at all. But I'm going to need to upgrade the Death Leaper for this event eventually anyway, so I wasn't too fussed about doing that. And he's going to be investing in it later on. So, it just goes to show, at the earlier levels, you can usually get decently far with characters that just have no investment put in them whatsoever, and that the return on investment past a certain point, it just gets so ridiculous where to the point where you just shouldn't even bother. So yeah, I think that is about all I had to say. There was something else on my mind, but it's kind of just slipped out. So I think I will just leave this here unless it can come back to me. So just going to pause and maybe come back. So yeah, I did remember something that I was forgetting. So just thinking about in terms of sort of mentioned coming back to the LRE in a second event a couple of times, and just in terms of getting blue star, if that's what you're aiming for, which is something that I aim to do in the second run of an event, just the ramifications of that. So in the maximum number of points you can get if you clear every single requirement for an LRE is 21,000. To score, to unlock a character at blue star in the second run, you need to score 18,500 points. So I like to think of these LREs in terms of how much I can afford to lose. So if I want to get blue wings on the character in the second run of the event, then I can afford to lose 2,500 points. And so I just sort of look at all the requirements and I think what requirements are going to give the worst return on investment, and I try to avoid those as much as possible. So in terms of this event, I think the ones that will give the worst return on investment will be Terrifying for Alpha, Full Infiltrate for Alpha again, and also the Psyker track for Gamma. I think everything else, every other requirement has characters that you can use for it that can carry the event quite well and that are useful in general. But Infiltrate, X to Row is about the only, I'd say, broadly useful character that you can use there. But he's terrible in LRE, so even though I have him at Diamond 3, I wouldn't expect him to get very far here at all, even if backed up by 4 other characters. Same goes for Full Terrifying. Really, there aren't any great characters available for this one. The exception would be, I think, Mephiston is the only good one. But even so, him by himself, I don't think he'd be able to carry us very far. And for me personally, I don't particularly want to invest in him too much. And it's actually a similar story for Gamma as well. I think the Psyker track, I don't use an Europhobe team, so I don't have Abraxas built. I don't want to build Archimatos because I don't think he's very good. Maybe if he gets reworked to be made good, he might be worth using there. I don't have Araman, and I don't have Mephiston built, but I might build Mephiston for this track too, just to get through some of the early levels. But again, I'm going to try and avoid that as much as possible. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to get through Chain with Titus. Titus is a one-man army. He can get really far just by himself. So that's basically just one character you need to invest in to do well here. Resilient, I'm already almost done with that, but again, we've got some good candidates for that to level up. I like Lucian, so I wouldn't mind leveling him up. I like Herodias, again, wouldn't mind getting him from Gold 1 up to Diamond, potentially, for this. You know, that wouldn't chafe on me at all. Trajann, again, when he's released, I'm very interested in getting him and building him. So that's another good candidate for full resilience. So again, that seems like a much better thing to aim for points in than Psyker or Terrifying or Infiltrate. Physical, I can use my Tangida and Snotflogger, both of whom are characters I'd very much recommend building up. And maximum 2 hits, there's a whole bunch of good characters available for that. Shosul, Eldrion, Boss Golgots, even Makatep I'd say is a good character. People will disagree with me on that, but I think he's a good LRE character. And so yeah, just you can get very far here without ever having to worry about these shitty requirements where you can build a bunch of characters to Diamond 3 and still not expect to get anywhere near completing the final battle. So that's just a good way, I think, of thinking about it. 2,500 points, and just making sure that you don't drop more than that, and blue wings will be guaranteed for your character. That being said, Trajann, I don't think his base stats are really that important because he's not there to be a damage dealer. I guess you want him to be able to survive as much as possible, but you know, difference between 5 stars and blue wings in that regard, blue star in that regard isn't really that important anyway, so maybe you wouldn't even want to worry too much about getting him to wing star if it means that you'd have to build crappy characters to do so. I mean, you'll still have to clear some levels of terrifying and infiltrate, for example, so if you really don't want to end up, I don't know, building Shadow Sun or something silly like that, then it's not the end of the world if you don't get them to blue wings, and it'll just be easier in the third run anyway. So, I'm a bit obsessive about getting characters to a blue star, but at the end of the day, I don't think it's really that important. The last bunch of legendaries I unlocked, I haven't even really paid much attention to them anyway. You do have to think about the FOMO, and just think, do I really need to have FOMO about this? Think about whatever character it is. Even if you do want to use them ultimately, does it even matter too much if they have that little extra stat boost or not? It may matter, it may not, but don't get your knickers too much in a twist over stuff that doesn't really matter too much. That's, I think, all I have to say on this topic now, so I will shut up before I run my mouth any further. I guess I'll just say check out my LRE guide. I'll link it in a comment or something, or in the description, or maybe even both, and maybe you'll find that useful, interesting. I doubt you'll find it interesting, but it might be useful. So yeah, I'll shut up.